Appreciate the question. Let me see what else we got here. Has there been any celebrity who has been caught false stunting more than Bow Wow? So I was made aware of the Bow Wow situation. So here's the thing I don't think that people quite understand, which is people on the internet understand some like basic functionality of the internet, right? And so what you have to remember is if you were to Google image search something, right? We can tell when something might be a Google image search. I don't know. It's like there's just something about the picture because you know what the pictures are, right? That come up early. All right. So if you are going to try to fake stunt, you need to use a different search than, say, like private plane or private jet or like anything along those lines if you were lying about the fact that you were on a private jet. And the reason why you need to not do that is everybody's going to go look up private jet, right? So like I'm good for this one. I can sniff out when you got something out the wiki. Right? Like you writing about something you don't know anything about. It is real easy to look up at whatever that thing is and be like, wait a minute, man, that fool got that out the wiki. Like I remember I was reading something once. It was something that involved the discussion of, I think the country was Mali. And it was obvious that the dude who was writing the story didn't know anything about Mali. So in the story, M-A-L-I, not M-O-L-L-Y, M-A-L-I, right? I think it was Mali, but anyway, it was described as, yeah, it was Mali because I pulled it up right here. And I remember reading in the story, and the story says from Mali, comma, a landlocked country in West Africa. And I'm like, wait a minute, homie, wait a minute. Wait just 1 minute right there. Landlocked. Landlocked. Like, why would landlocked be in your description of this country? And I was like, because you got it out the wiki. And sure enough, I looked it up, and it was straight right there in the wiki, right? Like, people do the same thing with Google Images. You see what I mean? They're doing the same exact thing. So if you're using a stock photo, you can't be as well known as Bow Wow out here fronting with a stock photo because all it takes is one person to get to the bottom of it. And by the way, if Twitter has taught us anything, is that there's a whole lot of people out here that if their lives are broken a different way would be ace detectives. Ace detectives. Cats out here getting to the bottom of it every day. Bottom of what? It. And they are coming to get you. Like, if you are Bow Wow, you got to know they coming for you. Now, to be fair to Bow Wow in this case, Bow Wow, okay, so I've stopped doing this. I used to do this more, like back when it was far more plausible that I was quote unquote not famous. I still contend now that I'm simply recognizable. But after that dude asked me to sign his Jordans, I'm like, okay, maybe you could make the argument that I'm famous, right? But many years ago, it was much easier to operate on the premise that I was not famous. And so I see ridiculous stuff out. I'm out going to get something to eat or at the mall or something like that. I take the picture, put it on Instagram, laugh just like everybody else does, right? Because I felt like I was still living that life. But one time I took a picture of a dude wearing a ridiculous get up at breakfast, and then I posted it. And while I'm sitting there at the table, the dude happened to follow me on the machine. And he was very, very upset that I took a picture of him in his T-shirt with some soccer scarf and some real tight capri-like pants, and I think it was maybe some flip-flops, and I feel like it was cold outside weather. He was very, very unhappy. He sent me a few angry tweets after that, after he had unfollowed me, because his feelings was really hurt. And somebody made the point. And I'm like, wow, people get so mad, you know, when they see this or that, when it's their turn or whatever. And somebody hit me. I think it might have been Nathaniel Friedman. He was like, well, you also have to admit it's kind of weird to look up and see your own picture, right? And I was like, damn, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. Like, I probably need to chill out on this. So I have a certain measure of sympathy for whatever it's worth. That Bow Wow is just posted up on the plane and somebody sneaking a picture of him to post it. You know what I'm saying? Like I could get that. Like, I'm not saying that's necessarily the coolest thing, though I'm acknowledging that I've been the person to take these pictures and post them before, right? Like, I had a bit of an epiphany about this sort of thing, right? And by the way, the epiphany was not just some it could happen to me thing. I honestly looked at it through the lens of being somebody else, right? But the dude who got the picture of Bow Wow posted it and made the very accurate point that he had just seen that Bow Wow was fronting like he was on the private plane while he's sitting there commercial. And by the way, did not appear to be in first class. And to me, the fronting on being on the private plane is one thing. Bow Wow and Coach, that's a different one. That's a different one, right? Because, I mean, I hope you've been taking care of your money, Bow Wow. Because I feel like you should have lived a life that made it such that you were never going to fly in Coach ever again. Because, can I tell you a secret? Don't tell nobody I said this, but next time you see me in Coach, that means something went wrong. Yeah. Now, Lance makes a very good point that Bow Wow is short enough to ride in Coach. Like, Coach is not nearly the inconvenience for Bow Wow that it is for me. I am probably a legitimate foot taller than Bow Wow. So yeah, like, I need the first class thing, you know, a little bit more. Like, I think I've talked to you guys about this. As many of you know, in the course of the last few years, I have, as they say in France, blown up, right? I do a little better than I used to. And as I told you guys before, like, when it comes to the shoes and stuff, that when I was a kid, I never got the shoes, and I convinced myself that I didn't think the shoes were a very important thing because I just didn't think shoes mattered. And then I got me a pair of fives a few years ago, and it was at that point that I realized actually my issue was that I simply didn't have the shoes. Like, once I had the shoes, I realized that, I like shoes a lot. I just didn't have them. Now, first class is one of those things. Now, see, the thing about first class is, number one, first class is absolutely best enjoyed when first class is purchased by someone else. Like, the upgrade, the upgrade on the sneak. Like, I remember the first time I got into first class, I had missed some flight, and they put me on another flight. And I remember the first flight, my seat was like row 14 or something like that. And so after they canceled me and they redid it or whatever, I go to the back to get into row 14. I'm sitting there and somebody's like, excuse me, sir, you're in my seat. I'm like, damn. And I look down at my boarding pass and that thing said 5F. And I was like, 5? Oh, really? The next thing you know, I'm up there in first class, man. They got them hot towels, you know. They got the almonds, cashews, you know. The meal ain't great, but it's a meal. Got a cookie afterward. All of that. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This isn't so bad. But then I immediately went right back to riding Coach. It was no big deal, right? Coach was the life that I knew. Coach was the life that I understood, right? And there is no shame in Coach, right? But as I started doing more stuff from work, you know, if I got a long flight, they'll put me up in the first class, you know, get me up there. It's like, all right, cool, you know. And it's the little things, right? Like being on the plane early, off the plane early. You ain't got to be in there fighting for space in the overhead because they got space for you in first class and your roller board. You know what I'm saying? They got it. You ain't got to mess around and be group one and be like, man, I hope I ain't got to gate check this, right? Like you don't really have to do that when you get in first class. You ain't never got to fight over the armrest when you're in first class. Like, do you understand how much better the flight is and you ain't got to rub elbows with some stranger? Right. You don't have to do that when you're in first class, right? It's just a bit more comfortable. And then some of these more futuristic flights, they got the first class with the buttons that you can press and the seat move into whatever little alignment it is that you want. You can lay straight back if you want to. You can just put your feet up, they give you a little lumbar support, give you a little massage stuff. These things happen. And like, it's cool when you do first class once. And if you go right back to coach, it's not a big deal, right? But you mess around and take 2-3 flights on first class in a row. And then you wind up back in coach. I went to something. I think it was in Atlanta. In Atlanta, I live in Miami. So Atlanta's like, it's a less than 2-hour flight, right? I'm like, okay, it's no big deal. The flight's less than 2 hours. Now, that's right. I was going to Huntsville. We were going to Huntsville for something for my mama. So it was like stop in Atlanta, then go over to Huntsville, right? And so I'm like, all right, the Atlanta flight's short. The Huntsville's flight's short. Coach, it is. I think the price was something else too high or whatever. It's just like, okay, coach, it is. Man, they put me in something like row 31. Right? I feel like it was. I think it was like row 31. So I had to get all the way back there to the 30s. Right? Put your stuff up over the overhead. Then you in there. And then the worst part of the flight for everybody. You are ready to get off this tube. Except that there's 30 rows of people ahead of you. And apparently none of them have been on a plane before because none of them have figured out how to smoothly get their shit and bounce. And I sat back there in the 30s. And I made that decision right there. I said, never again. Never again. Why? Because I don't have to. That's why. Because I don't have to. And guys, I got to that place really in like the last year. Like all of that. I got there in the last year. Okay. Which brings me back to what in the world is Bow Wow doing in coach? Right? Like I used to have people when I first started like doing the TV stuff and I'd send stuff from flying in coach and people hit me up and be like, oh my God, you're flying in coach. Now I had a problem with those people who would hit me up on the, oh my God, you flying in coach. Because those motherfuckers were flying coach too. Right? They don't know nothing about that life. Like they just made the assumption that, okay, you in first class world now. And at that point, I really wasn't in first class world, right? But they were just like, oh, they just want to try to find some way to talk down. That's just how a bunch of haters be out here doing, right? Like that's what that was for them. So, I mean, on one level, I don't want to be the guy looking at Bow Wow like, oh my God, I thought you was balling. You back here in coach, except now that I'm the person who's not trying to be in coach. I know how much money I got, and I live in Miami, which means, more importantly, I know how much money I don't got. And I feel like Bow Wow should never be sitting in coach. Should never be sitting in coach. I'd also like to note that from what I could tell, Bow Wow was flying from Atlanta to Fort Lauderdale, which... Guys, is Bow Wow on Southwest? Because that sounds like Bow Wow was flying Southwest. Yeah. Was Bow Wow flying Southwest? Because I don't even think he was flying JetBlue. And the reason I don't think he's flying JetBlue is I don't think that you can fly from Fort Lauderdale to Atlanta on JetBlue yet. Because, like, if you're flying JetBlue, I ain't even mad at you, man. I honestly am not mad at you. JetBlue ain't so bad. However, flying from Atlanta, full city list of places where you can go, Fort Lauderdale, not on the list. So that sounds to me like Bow Wow was flying Southwest. Here's a whole rack of space between Southwest and that private jet that he pretended like he was on. And look, man, if you frugal, that's fine. Because I don't think that Bow Wow has private jet money. Like, private jet money stacks up, okay? I don't think that Bow Wow has private jet money. And I think there's no shame in not having private jet money. I will probably never have private jet money. So no problem with that on Bow Wow, not having private jet money. But you got to have first class money. You do. And I also imagine that flying coach would have to be a unique sort of hassle for Bow Wow, right? Look, Bow Wow a lot more famous than I am, right? Somebody might kind of recognize me in coach. But Bow Wow? I mean, I can't imagine. And by the way, every Bow Wow conversation is going to be, the hell you doing in coach? You know, like I feel like every single conversation that's gonna Bow Wow gonna have in there is gonna be like, bruh, why are you flying coach? You see what I'm saying? I mean, like first class, I feel like people leave you alone. I flew on first class one time and Dr. J was there. I ain't say nothing to Dr. J. You know why? Because I feel like once you in first class, you gotta act like you've been there before. You ain't gotta do that in coach. You don't. So yeah, Bow Wow, you ain't have to tell me you was on a private plane. I promise that wasn't necessary. You know, like that. I mean, I know that that's a level of balling that most people ain't on. You ain't have to do that, right? However, a little shocked you flying coach, and I'm a little bit embarrassed inside that I'm the guy to say I can't believe you're flying coach.